I was raised inside a slaughterhouse for the first 16 years of my life. Kerrigan, they called it. From birth to 5 years old, I was raised inside a tiny white room named 117890. When I was 5, I was transferred to a bigger room with other children. We were taught to read and write and educated on humanity's biggest sin, our parents' horrific evil. 11456, one of the older kids who grew up alongside me, said, Kerrigan used to be a shopping mall. That used to be a Taco Bell, and pointed to clinical white walls where during playtime she would shout, Look, over there, used to be a movie theater. It's not that I didn't believe her. Humanity had left its mark, no matter how hard they tried to remove us. 11456 told me they had left advertising boards scattered around. I liked the Spider-Man brand new day one. I didn't know what a Spider-Man was, but I sure as hell wanted to. Kerrigan was one of the more high-tech slaughterhouses. When kids were transferred from other factories, they spoke of tiny, suffocating wooden houses holding 50,000 children cooped up with zero sunlight. Those kids went feral, especially those who'd grown up in the outside world. I knew a boy who had a human name, Aris. He told me his parents were killed and eaten raw right in front of him. Aris spoke in low, hysterical giggles, describing his mother's entrail in perfect detail, his father's skull opened up, brains spilling out onto steaming concrete, and his own desperate screams. I saw his quiet moments when he wasn't performing for an audience only he could see. We were going to escape, he whispered into his knees. Eris was only with us for maybe a week. I never saw him again. 11456, who secretly called herself Josie, gave us all birthdays. She turned to me with a big smile and said, June 18th. I started tallying the days, counting down. When my 15th June 18th came, the group of us were sent to a classroom. We all learned about it in class, forced to watch female birthing videos at the age of 12. Our prime objective as healthy stock was to continue the human race and provide meat for them. We had 2 years to pick a male partner, create offsprings as adults, and be ready for slaughter. Our one rule was, never look through the glass. I didn't want to find a mate. Josie was the one who made my cheeks warm. She was slaughtered 2 years earlier. Before she left, Josie gave us each a human name. Josie called me Hope. On my 16th, June 18th, a new boy called 11789 was transferred to Kerrigan. They brought him in the middle of the night, dumping him on the ground. He was considered good stock, perfectly plump, healthy, and ready to be processed at maturity. His skin, unlike ours, had warm, sun-kissed tones. His hair was short and cropped, with mousy brown curls hanging over his green eyes. My skin was yellowish and sickly, raised under harsh fluorescent lights. My hair reached my tailbone, and I could play piano on my ribcage. The first thing he said to me was, "You look like a fucking Simpson." I didn't know what a Simpson was, but I thought he was funny. The boy was surprisingly not a psychopathic human. "I'm Rowan Daly," he said, despite the identification tag around his neck reading 11789. "Don't fucking call me that bullshit." I didn't know humans had second names. A year passed, and most of us found mating partners. Nobody wanted to be with the boy from the outside. They saw him as feral and an animal. Rowan Daly, I cornered him on my 17th, June 18th, calling him by his second name. Rowan was sitting cross-legged on the floor, sketching with a piece of chalk. "What do you think?" He nodded to his drawing. I call it chicken nuggets. He shot me a grin, and my gut fluttered. Get it? I was yet to understand this boy's humor. I held out my hand. Can you be my meeting partner? The boy laughed loudly. I had to slam my hand over his mouth to avoid attracting attention. You're not serious. Rowan looked at me up and down. I'm good. He pulled me closer, breath heavy. Don't you want to go outside? A shiver trickled down my spine. No. Rowan folded his arms. You do know what this place is, right? Yes. It's a slaughterhouse, I said. For humanity's biggest sin. He rolled his eyes. Which is? I didn't want to say it. We were taught not to. Eating animals, I whispered in his ear. Rowan surprised me with a giggle. Then he took my hand and led me to the glass. Rowan smirked. Do you want to look outside with me? Outside? I hissed, tried to retract my hand, but he was forceful, almost playful. Come on. Rowan pulled me closer. Live a little, huh? He pressed his head against mine as I gave up, allowing myself to peer through the glass. Do you want to know why I was sent here? He hummed. A monstrous silhouette loomed. I stepped back. A man holding a little girl's hand. The girl held a balloon bearing the greatest zoo on earth. Rowan sighed as more figures emerged. Some of them waved. Others flashed strange-looking rectangles. Wide, excited eyes blinked back at me. Eris was a good actor, Rowan said. Josie was kinda lacking. I'm glad she left. His grip tightened. Kerrigan, Rowan whooped. The greatest fucking zoo on earth. He pulled me closer. Ever since I was a kid, I've wanted to be here, with all my favorite characters. I used to watch you on TV, Hope. His breath tickled my ear. I even voted on your human name. He turned to me wearing a grin. I'm your biggest fan. It was almost 10 p.m. when I heard the voice behind me. Excuse me? I turned. A little girl stood on the pavement. She couldn't have been older than 7. I'm lost. She looked scared. Not crying, not panicked. Just lost and scared. I crouched down. What's your name? Emily. Okay, Emily. Where do you live? She looked down. I don't know. Do you know your mom or dad's name? She simply shook her head. I don't remember. I glanced around. The street was empty. Do you know how you got here? She looked up at me. No. All right. I smiled gently. We'll figure it out together. I'm lost too. I winked. We walked for nearly an hour. Every house we knocked on, every person we asked, nobody knew anything. They simply slammed the door in my face. Emily didn't seem surprised. She just held my hand and walked beside me. Eventually, I called the police. 2 officers arrived within minutes and I explained everything. They looked around, then back at me. Sir? I followed their gaze. Emily was standing beside me, holding my hand. What? She's right there. The officers exchanged a glance, the kind people give when they think someone is confused. At the station, a detective came to speak to me, while Emily waited with the other officers. He listened carefully. He didn't interrupt. He didn't question whether I was telling the truth. He simply asked questions. What was she wearing? A white raincoat, red shoes. What did she look like? Brown hair, about 7 years old. He wrote everything down. Then he stopped. You said her name was Emily? I nodded. Yes. He looked at his notes for a long moment, then stood. I'll be right back. When he returned, he was carrying an old cardboard folder. He placed it on the table. Inside was a photograph, a little girl, white raincoat, red shoes, brown hair. My chest tightened. That's her. That's Emily. The detective watched me carefully. You're sure? Yes, I nodded. I've been with her all night. The detective slowly opened the folder. Her name was Emily Lewis Carter. She disappeared 32 years ago. I stared at that photograph, then the detective, then the photograph again. The detective pulled out another document. This case was never solved. He turned the page. She was last leaving school with a friend. I looked at him. He placed another photograph on the table. 2 children standing together. One was Emily. You recognize him? He asked, pointing at the other child. I couldn't speak. The boy in the photograph was me. You were the last person to see Emily Carter. I shook my head. No. The detective leaned closer. Your name appeared in the original investigation. I looked down at the photograph again. You've also been lost for 32 years. The detective watched my face change. So, I want to ask you one last question. I looked up, terrified. Where the hell is Emily? This story happened a few years back, when I was still a uni student. By the time I was in my 2nd year, I started seeing this girl by the name of Lauren. We had been dating through most of that year, and although we were still young, I was already convinced this bonny Irish girl with faint freckles on her cheek was the one I'd eventually settle down with. In fact, things were going so well between Lauren and I that I foolishly agreed to meet her family back home. Lauren's parents lived in the Irish Midlands, only an hour or 2 outside of Dublin. After taking a short flight from England, we made our way off the motorway and onto the country roads, where I was surprised to see how flat everything was, in contrast with the mountainous, rugged land I always imagined the Emerald Isle being. Lauren's parents lived in a very small but lovely country village, home to no more than 400 people, and surrounded by many farms, cow fields, and a very long stretch of bog land. Like any boyfriend going to meet their girlfriend's family for the first time, I was very nervous. But because of the historic tension that still exists between Ireland and England, I was more nervous than I really should have been. After all, what Irish parents wants to hear their daughter bringing home an Englishman? As it turned out, I had no reason to be worrisome, as I found Lauren's parents to be nothing but welcoming. Her mom was very warm and comforting, as Lauren said she would be, and her dad was a polite, old-fashioned sort of gent. There's no Mr. Mahan here. Call me John. His first words were to me. A couple of days and heavy dinners later, things were going surprisingly smooth. Although Lauren's parents had taken a shine to me, which included their border collie, Dexter, my mind still wasn't at ease. For some reason, I had this very unnerving feeling, as though something terrible was eventually going to happen. I just assumed it was nervous jitters from meeting the family, but nevertheless, something about it didn't quite feel right, almost like a warning. On the 3rd night of our stay, this uneasy feeling was still with me, so much so that I just couldn't fall asleep. Staring up at that ceiling through the darkness, I must have remained in that position for hours. By the time dawn seeped through the bedroom curtains, I checked my phone to realize it is now 6 a.m. Accepting no sleep is going to come my way, I plan to leave Lauren, sleeping peacefully, to go for a stroll down the country roads, accidentally waking her while I got dressed. Lauren, being Lauren, insisted that we go for an early morning walk, bringing Dexter, the family dog, with us, along with the ball and hurling stick to play with. We followed the road that leads out the village, eventually passing by the secluded property of a farm. We then find ourselves on the outskirts of a bog. Although Lauren grew up here all her life, she never once explored this bog before. As until recently, it was the private property of the Pete community, which has gone out of business. Taking to exploring the bog, the three of us then stumbled upon a trail that leads through a man-made forest. It seems as though the further we walk, the more things we discover, because following the very same trail through the forest, we next discover a narrow railway line once used for transporting peat, which cuts through the artificial trees. Now, feeling curious as to where this railway may lead us, we leave the trail to follow along it. Stepping over the never-ending rows of wooden planks, Lauren and I suddenly hear a rustling far out in the trees. Whatever it is, it sounds large, and believing it's most likely a deer, I squinted my tired eyes through the dimness of the woods to see it. But what I see instead is the faint silhouette of something. I asked Lauren, just as confused as I, to what it was. Continuing to stare at the silhouette a while longer, Lauren, with more efficient eyes than my tired own, finally provides an identity to what this unknown thing is. I think it's a cow, she answers me, though her face appears far from convinced. It probably belongs to the doily farm we passed by. Pulling the phone from her pocket, Lauren then used the camera to zoom in on whatever is watching us, and while I wait for her to confirm what this is through the pixels on her screen, the uneasy feeling that's ailed me for the past 3 days only straightens, until, breaking the silence around us, Lauren wheels out in front of me. Oh my god. What Lauren sees through the screen, staring back at us from inside the forest, is a naked body of a human being. Its pale, bare arms clasped around the tree it hides behind. But what stares back at us, with seemingly pure black, unblinking eyes and snow-white fur, is the head of a cow. Babe, what is that? Lauren frighteningly asks. I don't know. My trembling voice replies, unaware if my tired eyes deceive me or not. Upon sensing Lauren's and my own distress, Dexter becomes aware of the strange entity watching us from within the trees, and with a loud, threatening bark, he races after this thing, like a hound on a fox hunt, disappearing through the darkness of the woods. "Dexter, no!" Lauren yells, before chasing after him. "Lauren, don't go in there." She doesn't listen. By the time I'm deciding whether to go after her, Lauren was already gone. Afraid as I was to enter the woods, I was even more terrified by the idea of my girlfriend being there with that thing, and so, swallowing my own fear as best as I could, I reluctantly enter to follow Lauren's yell of Dexter's name. The closer I come to her cries, the more panicked and hysterical they sound. She was reacting to something terrible. By the time I catch sight of her through the thin trees, I begin to hear the other sounds. The sound of deep growling and snarling, intertwined with low, soul-piercing groans of pain and torment. I catch up to Lauren and see her standing as motionless as the trees around us, and in front of her, on the forest floor, I see what was making that horrific sound. What I see is Dexter, his domesticated jaw clasped around the throat of this thing, as though trying to tear the life from it, in the process staining the mossy white fur of its neck a dark currant red. The creature doesn't even seem to try and defend itself, as though paralyzed with fear, weakly attempting to push Dexter away with trembling, human hands. Among Dexter's primal snarl and the groans of the creature's agony, my ears are filled with Lauren's own terrifying screams. "Do something!" she screams at me. Beyond terrified, I know I need to take charge. I just can't stand here and let this suffering continue. Taking Lauren's hurl from her hands, I force myself forward with each step. Close enough now to Dexter, but far enough that this thing won't buck at me with its hind legs. Holding the hurl up high, foolishly feeling the need to defend myself, I grab a hold of Dexter's loose collar, trying to jerk him desperately away from the tormented creature. But my fear of the creature prevents me from doing so, until I have to resort to twisting the collar around Dexter's neck, squeezing him into submission. Now holding him back, Lauren comes over to latch Dexter's lead onto him, barking endlessly at the creature with no off switch. Even with the two of us now restraining him, Dexter is still determined to continue the attack. The cream whiteness of his canine teeth and the stripe of his snout stained with the creature's blood. Tying the dog lead around a tree's narrow trunk, keeping Dexter at bay, Lauren and I stare over at the creature on the ground, clawing at his open throat. Its bare legs scrape lines through the dead leaves and soil, and as it continues to let out deep, shrieking groans of pain, all Lauren and I can do is watch it suffer. "Do something!" Lauren suddenly yells at me. "You need to do something. It's suffering." "What am I supposed to do?" I yell back at her. "Anything. I can't listen to it anymore." Clueless to what I'm supposed to do, I turn down the ashwood of Lauren's hurl, still clenched in my now shaking right hand. Turning back to Lauren, I see her eyes glued to it. When her eyes finally meet my own, among the strained yaps of Dexter and the creature's endless, inhuman groans, with the grating nod of her head, Lauren and I know what needs to be done. Possessed by an overwhelming fear of this creature, I still cannot bear to see it suffer. It wasn't human, but it was still an animal as far as I was aware. Slowly moving towards it, the hurl in my hand suddenly feels extremely heavy. Eventually, I'm stood over the creature, close enough that I can perfectly make out its ungodly appearance. I see its red, clotted hand still clawing over the loose, shredded skin of its throat. Following along its arms, where the bloodstains end, I realize the fair pigmentation of his flesh is covered in an extremely thin layer of white fur, so thin the naked human eye can barely see it. Continuing along the jerk of its body, my eyes stop on what I fear to stare at the most. Its non-human, but fairy animal head, frozen in the middle, between the swatting flaps of its ears and the abyss of its square gaping mouth. Having now fallen silent, I meet the pure blackness of its unblinking eyes. Staring at this creature dead in the eye, I feel like I can't move, no more than a deer in headlights. I don't know for how long I was like this, but Lauren, freeing me from my paralysis, shouts over, "What are you waiting for?" Regaining feeling in my limbs, I realize the longer I stall, the more this creature's suffering will continue. Raising the hurl to the air, with both hands firmly on the handle, the creature beneath me shows no signs of fear whatsoever. It wanted me to do it. It wanted me to end its suffering. But it wasn't because of the pain Dexter had caused it. I think the suffering came from its own existence. I think this thing knew it wasn't supposed to be alive. The way Dexter attacked the thing, it was as though some primal part of him also sensed it was an abomination, an unnatural organism, like a cancer in a body. Raising the hurl higher above me, I talk myself through what I have to do. A hard and fatal blow to the head. No second tries. Don't make this creature's suffering any worse. Ready to strike a fallen log with his axe, I stand over the cow-human creature, with nothing left to do but end its painful existence once and for all. But I can't do it. I can't bring myself to kill this monstrosity. I was too afraid. Dropping Lauren's hurl to the floor, I go back over to her and Dexter. Come on, we need to leave. We can't just leave it here, she argues. It's in pain. What else can we do for it, Lauren? I raise my voice to her. We need to leave, now. We make our way out of the forest, continually having to restrain Dexter, still wanting to finish his kill. But as we do, we once again hear the groans of the creature, and with every column of tree we pass, the groans grow ever louder. Don't listen to it, Lauren. The deep, gurgling shriek of those groans, piercing through us both. It was calling after us. Later that day, and now safe inside Lauren's family home, we all sit down for supper. Lauren's mom having made a Sunday roast, although her parents are deep in conversation around the dinner table. Lauren and I remain dead silent, sat across the narrow table from one another. I try to share a glance with her, but Lauren doesn't even look at me, motionlessly staring down at her untouched dinner plate. Aren't you hungry, love? Lauren's mom asks concernedly, replying with a single word. No. Lauren stands up from the table and silently leaves the room. Is she feeling unwell or anything? Her mom tries prodding at me. Trying to be quick on my feet, I tell Lauren's mom we had a fight while on our walk. Although she was very warm and welcoming up to this point, for the rest of the night, Lauren's mom was somewhat cold towards me, as if she just assumed it was my fault for our imaginary fight. Though he hadn't said much of anything, as soon as Lauren leaves the room, I turn to see her dad staring daggers at me. Despite removing the evidence from Dexter's mouth, all while keeping our own mouths shut, I'm almost certain John knew something more had happened. The only question is, did he know what it was? Stumbling my way to our bedroom that night, I already find Lauren fast asleep, or at least pretending to sleep. Although I was so exhausted from the sleep deprivation and horrific events of the day, I still couldn't manage to rest my eyes. The house and village outside may have been dead quiet, but in my conflicted mind, I kept hearing the groans of the creature, as though its screams for help had reached all the way into the village and through the windows of the house. It was only 2 days later did Lauren and I cut our visit short, and if anything, I'm surprised we didn't leave sooner. After all, knowing what lives, or lived, in the very place she grew up, Lauren was more determined to leave than I was. For anyone who asks, yes, Lauren and I are still together, though I'm afraid to say it's not for the right reasons. You see, Lauren still hasn't told her parents about the creature in the bog, nor have I my own friends or family. Unwilling to share a supernatural encounter, or whatever you want to call it, with anyone else, all we really have is each other. Well, that's the reason I'm sharing this story now. Because even if we can't share it with the people in our own lives, at least by telling it now, to perfect strangers, under an anonymous name, we can both finally move on.